Welcome to the Time for Agape podcast, where we share stories of hope, healing, and transformation through Jesus Christ. And since our founding in 2019, our mission has been clear: to empower the church to love the LGBTQ+ community boldly, to equip the church with biblical truth about God's good design for sexuality, and to encourage the church to stand for the transforming power of Jesus Christ. We've seen God restore countless lives. We pray you encounter Jesus as Emmanuel, God with us.
Hey everyone, Nate Oilo here, and I want to welcome you to another edition of Time for Agape. I am the director of Agape First Ministries, and we are an inner healing ministry based in the Midwest. We're excited to be with you. We're in the midst of this conversation about conversion therapy, gender ideology, all of these hot button issues that are on the news, they're in our legislative bodies, and we just want to bring some clarity to the issue, because there's lots of agendas out there and lots of things that just simply aren't true. And so we've been talking about that these past 4 weeks. I think this is our fourth episode in this series. I'm excited about today. I'm super excited about our guest. But before I bring her on, I'm going to bring on my co-host, Darren Mell. Hi, Darren.
Happy Friday, Nate.
Happy Friday.
Well, I want to.
It's time for Agape. We need it, right? Well, I'm going to bring on our guest right away because there's just so much that I want to talk about and get into with her. Pamela Garfield Yeager. She's a licensed, let me get this right, licensed clinical social worker. And she has done therapy. She's written several books, which we're going to talk about later, on the gender issue. And I got to first see Pamela. She testified at the hearing that myself and Gracie, who's not with us today, testified at, and we saw her and we just said, we've got to have her on the show. So welcome, Pamela.
Hi there. Thank you.
Well, I was talking with you about this before the show. You know, it really is, I think, brave and courageous to be a professional, and from a kind of a professional space, step out and talk about these issues and talk about these issues truthfully. What was it for you that kind of was the impetus for starting to say the truth?
Well, I do have an interesting story. I was telling you a little bit beforehand, but I'll tell you the full story now. So I've been a social worker, therapist, supervisor for over 20 years, but then I had to drop out of my profession because of a disability. I came back in 2021 after about 4 years of a hiatus. And that's when I started to see the craziness. This is in California. Half the girls at this teen program I was working at were identifying as non-binary. And what was so shocking to me was not just what the kids were doing, but really it was what my colleagues were doing or not doing. What they were affirming, that and they were saying this was normal, and they were demonizing parents for questioning this. And I thought I was in the twilight zone. So I didn't know what to do. I had been out for many years. I was only working part-time because I still had chronic pain. I didn't really feel I had much of a voice. But then the state of California decided that I was required to take an experimental vaccine that I wasn't comfortable taking after having so many health issues and chronic pain. I just felt like I was finally making my comeback. So I said, no, thank you. And I left. It was honestly a struggle for me to continue doing that work. Physically, it was hard. It was difficult for me to type and sit in a chair for a long time because I had a nerve injury. So I decided, all right, I'm going to stop struggling doing this and I'm going to start speaking out. I have nothing left to lose. And that's when I started to be vocal on this issue.
Wow. I love that. And you said this when you testified at our legislature. You're not really a religious person. That's not a part of your life. You're really coming from a secular space, which I think gives you a unique voice into this issue because it's not religiously motivated. You're just kind of looking at the science and the data and what's happening, and you're noticing there's something off here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wow. I mean, people don't like to think of this way, but a lot of times religion and common sense do go hand in hand, and I think that's what's happening here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I just have so many things I want to ask you about. One of the things that, and you said this when you testified, and I wanted to stand up and cheer because you brought up the issue of autism. Mm-hmm. And you know, I've had the honor to work with multiple people who have had some gender dysphoria stuff, and 9 times out of 10, they're on the spectrum. So can you talk a little bit about that, Pamela, and what you're noticing, and if there's any research around this?
It is a known fact that autism is highly represented in trans communities. I hate using these words.
Yeah.
Even they will admit that. They'll say that, but they won't say it's their autistic traits that bring them to that conclusion, or feed into some of these thoughts and patterns that the trans culture brings about. I also recognize, and they would not say this, but that autistic, especially kids, are marketed to. They have an autistic trans flag. If you look in a lot of the autism marketing and products, they have rainbow products on them, and trans type symbols all over them. And just their temperaments, it lends itself to it because they tend to not fit in socially. They tend to be online more, and that's where they usually learn these ideas. And they also get more rigid and locked into their thinking, so it's harder to pull them out of it once they have grasped onto the idea that this might be the reason that they aren't fitting in and the reason they're struggling and they're having pain, because it feels like a great solution. Oh, they're born in the wrong body, that's why. The other trait about autism is the sensory issues. So they'll say, if you're uncomfortable in clothes, like more fancy clothes, that could mean you're trans. A lot of girls I've heard say that the binders, it especially if they have larger breasts, it feels kind of like a comfort to them because of their sensory issues. So all of these things feed into why this population is overrepresented among the trans kids.
Wow. Yeah. Darren, do you have a question? You're muted, Darren.
Sorry about that. Could you tell our audience about the background where you've been traveling and the narratives that you've been growing and building upon? Like, where'd you start, and what has been that progression? You said you came back and you saw the stuff that changed, and you've been back for a while now, and you have some books that have been written, and so what have you been learning about this over time that will help people see that this has been growing and how that plays out?
Yeah, well, first of all, this was not that prominent before. I think 5 years during the lockdowns, it really exploded, but it was exploding before that. Around 2015, I think, was the start of the real explosion, and that's when like Bruce Jenner, Caitlyn Jenner was on the cover of, I think, Vanity Fair, and the Hollywood and all of the pop culture really started to mainstream these ideas. I wasn't attuned to it at that point. In fact, I'm in an Epic Times documentary. It's called Gender Transformation. And in that documentary, I'm talking about how I was a supervisor at a high school, and I was a part of coordinating an LGBTQ group. I'm so ashamed of saying this. It was a secret group on the school campus. I didn't lead it. It wasn't my idea, but the agency that I work for asked me to coordinate it. And so I did, without obviously having a lot of critical thinking about it. So I thought I was helping kids. I thought I was, helping them learn who they are and such. There were no T's at that school. There are no transgenders. This was in 2015. Actually, I lied. There was one, but she really wasn't. she wasn't really a part of this group, and the school didn't acknowledge or didn't believe that she really turned into a boy. In fact, they even had a separate changing area for her. So nobody was buying into it, is the point. And so I just thought I was helping some kids who were struggling with their identities. I really didn't think about the entire agenda that I was really tricked to be a part of. So I was there. I was tricked. So that's why it's kind of like I know who I'm talking to, because it takes one to know one. I know the thinking behind it. That naive thought that you're just helping kids that are different and that they're misunderstood and all those stupid ideas that are just obviously naive. And that's why I know the therapists how they think, because in a way I did too, and not to the degree that they're at now, but I did think it to somewhat. And then I think it just had to get so extreme for me to recognize how ludicrous the entire idea was, and to recognize how I had been quietly indoctrinated myself to believe that these kids need this kind of weird rescuing or something from their parents just because I don't even know. We didn't even ask what their parents thought about it. We just didn't include them, that's the biggest problem right there. But in general, though, when we did counseling, we did include parents. Just of that group, we did not. So, yeah, I'm not proud of this. I don't want to talk about it. I'm all squirming because it's embarrassing.
Well, it's been a long understood fact that, these groups don't inform parents. In fact, there's so much that happens in secrecy. It's unbelievable. And it's really kind of horrifying when you think about it, what the kinds of things that we're doing to children, to minors, minus parental involvement.
Yeah, and of course I didn't know what all these implications were. Now I know. I've met many detransitioners, and I've seen people talk about the fallout, what happens when you take cross-sex hormones. I've seen how much harm it does to the body. I know Chloe Cole, for example, in person, and she has spoken publicly how she basically, as a young girl, experienced menopausal symptoms. She had hot flashes when she was a high schooler. This is not acceptable, and no doctor warned her or her parents of that. All they did was tell her that if she didn't basically induce an endocrine disorder in her body, she would have killed herself. That's not medicine.
No.
And Pam, what have you learned about that threat? Because that comes up a lot. And I just saw some posts on some pages about, the threat that this conversion therapy is going to cause people to commit suicide. And, the Supreme Court had ruled 8-1 that conversion therapy bans, is viewpoint discrimination. And so now they're trying to sue or open up the doors civilly to sue people who counsel children. So I saw Linda Seiler put out a post today or yesterday saying it's legal to tell a child that they're born in the wrong body. It's illegal to tell them that they're born in the right body.
Yeah, it's pretty Orwellian, isn't it?
Yeah. And so what has been your experience in the research that you've done, and how would you explain that whole threat of suicide? Like, it seems like what is that term called? Taking someone hostage or blackmailing.
Blackmailing. It's emotional blackmail is what it is. And that was honestly part of my awakening when I hadn't heard that threat in my career before that leave of absence. That was not something that was taught. That was not something I had heard. And now it's repeated over and over again. And you see it in slogans: gender affirming care saves lives because it's preventing suicide. To me, it was all shocking. I hadn't seen it. That was part of why I think it was easy for me to speak out, because I wasn't a part of that slow boil of the messaging. It all came at me at once. For me, as someone who's worked with very troubled teens and people with cluster B type personality disorders, I could see through it right away. I didn't really need research. I saw that this was an emotional manipulation that people who tend to have borderline traits do. That's what people do when they're afraid of abandonment. They say, if you leave me, I will kill myself, or if you don't do blank, I will kill myself, or if this doesn't happen, I will kill myself. That's emotional blackmail. And that's what people with personality disorders do. So I saw that right away. That was part of my shock. I can't believe that professionals are doing this. Therapists, that's what we were trained to be able to see through. And then we're the ones touting that lie. It's very surprising. So just clinically, it was just didn't make any sense. You can't predict someone's suicide. And if you have someone who has suicidal tendencies or is vulnerable emotionally, which is what this population is, you don't tell them they're going to go kill themselves. You don't talk about suicide. You don't do that with people. That's not indicated. That's against everything we've ever learned as therapists. You don't talk about suicide more. If someone talks about it with you, you shouldn't be afraid of it, and you should ask them, what they're, if they have a plan, and do that assessment. But you're not supposed to feed them that idea before they even say it, and that's what we're doing, especially with kids. We're telling them in front of their parents that if they don't do this, that they will kill themselves. Which, one, just teaches them how to manipulate, and two, it scares them. It's just terrible. And then in terms of research, I looked up all the studies that they keep citing, and they're all a load of blank. they're lies. If you look at, I did 2 testimonies that day in Minnesota, and one of them I totally tore down the studies that they tend to share, which is they have small sample sizes. Their data collection comes from like self-surveys. They don't have control groups. There's no study that has a control group. So you have 2 groups of people that have gender dysphoria or gender distress or feeling these uncomfortable feelings, and then 2 tracks of treatment, and then following them over long term. They don't have that. That doesn't exist. So and also most of them don't have long-term follow-ups. I think the longest is maybe 2 years, which is not long enough, because we know most detransitioners come around 7 or 8 years after they've done it, sometimes a lot longer. So we don't have this data that they keep saying that this science is settled. It's not true.
If you could you describe, you just said the research, some of the problems that you've seen. What is that word that they use to say that it's speculative or based on their testimony, or it's a survey of what they believe at the time? What's the word?
I don't know. Like self-report. Is it?
Yeah, self-reporting. Is that the word?
Yeah,
It's
self-reporting. Because also
research.
you're telling them they've all been fed this lie, so they're constantly saying and believing they're suicidal all the time. A lot of them are. Some of them feel it and believe it, and I think some of them don't really feel and believe it, but they're so used to just saying it. I think it's a combination.
Yeah, it's amazing when you said that you weren't like slowly boiled into this, and so you kind of got whiplash coming back.
Yes.
Like, what is that?
Yeah.
And because you weren't with the community of your peers as they were being slowly boiled, you got an external perspective of where you left off before it entered. Yeah. And this research, in the homosexual or the LGBT, in the LGBT realm, with gay marriage and research showing, that kids are just as well off with gay married couples. That one was self-reporting as well.
Was it?
And it was asking them questions. Well, how do you feel about being a parent? Well, if they're taking the survey, they're going to say, yeah, we're doing great. Oh, our kids are doing great. It wasn't they're quantitative or qualitative. I think
right. Okay. That's okay. Yes.
Yeah. And so it's just asking questions and then tabulating it without really, doing sciencey things with
so
that.
They use that. This is interesting. You're saying they asked the parents how their kids were doing, and they're saying that was solid data. It's very interesting because I don't know if you've heard of Lisa Littman. She's the one that coined the term ROGD, or rapid onset gender dysphoria, and she did some research about how it's really a trend, and how especially these teenagers are learning it online and in other areas. And her main source of data was surveying the parents about their children and how their children were doing before, after, and during transition or whatnot. And the trans activists and their side said that that data was not valid because she used the parents' report. But their parents' report's okay when it says what they want it to say, doesn't it? It's interesting.
Yeah, and that's been my experience as I've been reading these reports. It's the surveys. And we have, the 700,000 quote of people going through conversion therapy from the Williams Institute. And if you go read that report, I found it hysterical because in the footnotes, when they're coming up with all these numbers, they say, this number, and then you look at the footnote and it says unpublished research by the Williams Institute. And they took some of these studies that were surveys and then just extrapolated, well, transgender is 2% of it, so if we multiply that, we're going to get this number of people. And they reported that at some time they've experienced what we call conversion therapy. And then these people have also but had experienced suicide thoughts.
And that's the other thing. They conflate suicidal thoughts with suicide itself and even suicide attempts. So someone has a suicidal thought is very different than someone who's made an attempt and someone who has followed through and carried out suicide. Those are very different things, and they say it's the same.
And they're conflating, they're conflating that they ever questioned, like wanting to go back to being the gender that they were born as. That experience of questioning of going back would be conversion therapy.
Oh.
Or if did anybody ever tell you that you it's wrong to be gay? Well, then that's conversion therapy, and they're conflating what did that ever happen and did you ever have suicidal, but it wasn't a cause and effect in the report. And they say it in the report that it's not a cause and effect, but yet that is how it's been used.
Yeah, the correlation is not causation.
Yeah. And so it's interesting. And to have you hit the ground coming back and being surprised, I think that's a big, it really shows us like how it's been progressive over time and how the narrative has just been notched a little bit at a time. And I find that research points pretty interesting because it's all over the place, that taking it as if it's this hard science, but it's more qualitative. So
yeah, none of it's science.
Sorry.
Pam, I want to ask, I'm glad you brought this up. I want to ask about rapid onset gender dysphoria and test a theory. So a while back, I had a 13-year-old girl come in to see me. Story we've heard over and over again. Her best friend said, I'm trans. And then, and so now this thought comes into her head, oh my Lord, what if I'm trans too? But it caused her so much distress like this, because she could not get this thought out of her head, I'm trans, So we just went through, there's a really great workbook. It's called the OCD Workbook for Teens. Real simple CBT stuff, just little nuggets. But basically, like, well, let's think about your thinking, and it's just a thought, and our thoughts don't have to dominate our lives. And within 6 months, she was fine. And I wonder, how often that's happening with these young girls. They have this intrusive thought, and I'm sure her friend, maybe she really did have gender dysphoria stuff going on, but there's always the one, and then the rest of them are all going, oh my, what if that's me, and of course, then the response from society is, well, yeah, you probably are, like, do you notice that? I mean, where I like it's almost OCD like, where there's this thought that comes in and it just gets stuck, and you can't get it out, and then you're just affirmed. And so really, the compulsion part of the OCD is that they're just okay to do that, like you go all the way.
There's a lot of connection between OCD, or I'll just say like obsessive traits and obsessive thoughts when it comes to a transgender lifestyle, because you inherently are obsessing about yourself and your body and how you're mismatched or what you want your body to be like. If you start hormones or you even start changing your style, you're obsessing about your style, how you're standing, how you're sitting, how you're holding your hands, everything, all of your mannerisms. It becomes quite the obsession. You're really obsessing with yourself, which is stunts their development in many ways. So that's really that connection. My experience with kids, honestly, is different than the one you described, because most of them, when they decide that they either believe they're trans or maybe want to be trans, they usually embrace that. They want that.
Mm.
It feels good to them because it's a solution to some problem that they have, and they usually get sort of love bombed. They usually feel good, at least temporarily. It's a short term kind of short term fix for not good for long term. So I find that it's hard to knock them out of it, not because they're upset and they're freaking out, but more like because they want this, because it feels like a great solution, and they find kind of this social network through it. Many times they'll get a lot of attention online. If they do their own social media, it really gives a lot of reward, and they'll pretend like it's not and that they're victims, but we see that they get a lot of reward for it. So then it's hard to pull them out of it because they're getting that social reward.
Yeah. And of course, the other huge piece of this is trauma, having a history of trauma. And you were mentioning before the show, you just moderated a panel of detransitioners, and that was a commonality. To talk a little bit about that, the how this is rooted in trauma, and what you're noticing.
Yeah, especially those that are not the rapid onset type, those that have been trans for many years, those that someone who's maybe more new to the topic would look at them and think maybe they were the quote unquote true trans, the real deal, that, really deep seated feelings that they're of the other sex or some other gender. They almost always have. In my experience, I haven't found a case that have not had an experience of trauma or some kind of early attachment type issue, like they were adopted, or I know one detransitioner, she was a product of a surrogacy pregnancy. And I think that had a lot to do with her trans identity. Everybody on that panel, I believe, had trauma. I mean, they ended up having trauma, also medical trauma from what they went through, but also before that, they had trauma. They had their tumultuous family lives. Some of them were homeless before. Some of them had sexual trauma in their histories, all that kind of thing. So a lot of it has to do with, coming from a struggling family, or some kind of trauma in their life led them to feel really detached. What's the word? And now I'm blanking on the word. When you're dissociated from your body. It's a dissociation. So that's why dissociation. This is a dissociation, and trauma. That is a hallmark of trauma, dissociation.
Absolutely. It's really mind-boggling. We've just covered a few things: autism, OCD, a history of trauma, and if it was if the issues were manifesting in any other way, alcoholism, drug abuse, whatever, some kind of addiction, we would say, well, that's probably not the healthiest way to deal with your autism, OCD, or trauma. This seems like the one thing where they're saying, no, that's the way to treat it.
Yeah, because they're captured of their own religion. That there are these magical souls that are living inside of people's bodies, and their physical bodies are inconsequential, and our bodies are almost like molds of clay that we can just transform. It's very dark, and just what's the word? It's a dark idea, and this is what queer theory does. It turns everything upside down. So we're talking about a really deep-rooted ideology. Instead of recognizing, I think we all agree here that when you meet someone who has these feelings, they're unhealthy feelings, and deciding that you need to transform your body to match these wrong feelings in your mind, that's a negative coping mechanism. It's a symptom of some other problem. Whereas the ideologues, they think that they compare those feelings to immutable characteristics like the brown eyes that I have, and that we're discriminating to not let them, I don't know, shoot their eyeballs out or something if they wanted to change their eye color. Right? It's just it's very backwards because we're coming from two different perspectives, and it's hard. We're always talking over each other because they come from a different core belief than we do. And once you let go of, you recognize this as a magical thought, and there's absolutely no proof and no science behind it whatsoever, and in fact it's very illogical, then you realize the whole thing, the house of cards, just fall really fast.
Yeah, and as a pastor, Pam, the language that I use is, and it is a religion. You just said that it is a religious belief, and it's an ontological, what does it mean to be human question.
Yeah,
and
sure
from
is.
the Christian perspective, the Gnostics didn't view the body as it was just materialism, and something to be set free of, that there's a higher existence in spirituality. And we use the word ideologues and I quit using that because that puts it more into a political realm, where as a pastor, the Bible tells us that we're not battling against individuals, we're battling against the principalities, which is the demonic teachings, demonic doctrines. There's doctrines from God, our creator, and from the enemy, Satan. And the compassion that we have as Christians for the individual created as man or woman in God's image, and how holy and beautiful it is. And to say that people are born in the wrong body is to say that the spirit that God chose for that body was a mistake, or that the body was a mistake. And people have said, well, Darren, you're demonizing the transgender. I said, actually, I'm holding them up to a higher dignity, because to say that you're a spirit born in the wrong body is actually dehumanizing. It's rejecting the body that was given to you, and there's no scientific evidence for it. If you really look at the brain studies, they say, well, the gay man's brain, or I'm sorry, not the gay man's brain, the transgender man's brain. Well, that's after death, not at birth. And how you use your brain and how it grows, and the drugs that you take, and HIV is known to shrink the hippocampus. And so, when you look at the study, they kind of fall apart. And it really does come down to, what do you believe human flourishing is? What is the purpose of mankind? And Pam, you're coming, and I hear you saying language, you're coming from a place that there is a normal to be a male and a female. But in 2007, the APA rejected intelligent design. And if you reject intelligent design, you're rejecting a standard of normal, a reality that we are created male and female, and that we are our bodies. And so they've given us the spectrum of experience. And so to me, how I see their science is that the science is now, everything is on a spectrum, because it's just human experience. And so how many people do you put into the study, and does that represent all of mankind? Well, we're not allowed, Nate and I, allowed to be part of these surveys, because we have internalized homophobia. And that's why we're not practicing gay. And, we're really still gay. Once gay, always gay. You can't come out of that. But as you said, the immutable trait argument, like your brown eyes, have you heard of the Lisa Diamond study in the APA, and her teaching at Emory University, saying that sexual orientation is actually fluid? And we have to stop saying that it's immutable, because it's not true. And so to me, as a pastor in the Christian faith, I minister truth from what I believe the creator, and that we were intelligently designed. And I think the science shows that. You can't test in 1,000 years if that person asserted their gender identity, short of maybe some surgeries or something that affects their bones. Because in the end, our bones are going to show, you're male or female. And that's the reality.
What are they even showing in these brain scans? I mean, what does it really mean? I don't think they really know, because like you said, you're you're changing the cognitive development, everything, when you take these hormones and if you're living your life one way or another, you can change things, but that doesn't necessarily mean you were born that way.
And think about the science, Pam. If we were to do the science with control groups, we enter into a very unethical question there. And so the only science that they have has to be retrospective, has to be qualitative, not quantitative, because you'd have to have a control group that doesn't want to be trans, but has to be forced, like doing the brain scans and stuff. It's just the sciencey side of things. I'll call it sciencey. It ends up being ideological, and it's been grabbed by ideology and a worldview that's rejected a creator. That's pretty much my thesis right there.
And the reason people don't like to say that it's a religion, just legally, I think that it opens up a whole can of worms legally when you start to say things are religion. I think that's why people don't say it. I don't really understand all the legality, but because you have the religious rights, so then they don't want to say religion, because then I guess it messes the whole thing up. I think it makes it hard to fight it. Yeah. Because if you say it is a religion, then they get religious rights too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And there's another podcast, Nate, that we can talk about that, because
there we go.
I have a whole thesis about that.
That's the reason.
That argument.
That's the reason they don't like to say it. It really is, but that's because then it just yeah. Our civil liberties, it makes it really messy.
It goes back to the founding of our country and what the freedom of religion is about. And even in our Constitution in Minnesota, it says that the freedom of religion is not for licentiousness.
Okay.
And the founding fathers use the words licentiousness. That's without moral boundaries.
Yeah, but see, who gets to judge what's moral?
Exactly. It's the people. Yeah. It's the people who vote. And so we get the science that we believe in.
But if the people really believe it and they're silenced and canceled, like what's happened in my profession, in the mental health profession, then we don't know what the real consensus is.
Yeah.
Well, you don't even know what the truth is, because there's only one allowed consensus.
Exactly.
And to me, when it becomes silencing thought and silencing other research that they don't like, that's tyranny. Mm-hmm. That's not truth seeking. So, Nate.
Well, Pam, I want to make sure that we talk about your books. You've written several books. Yeah. One called A Practical Response to Gender Distress.
Yes.
Which is tools and tips for families. Tell us about that book and what people can find in that book.
Okay, so here I have it here. I'm gonna hold it up. And what's this book? I was doing a lot of these talks about this topic, and I just kept learning more and more, meeting more detransitioners. And I started off with kind of this small little pamphlet thing that I had online with my thoughts, and it expanded into a book is really what happened. I was going to just do a booklet and turn it into a book because there was so much, but it's still pretty, it's written in very basic language. It's not very academically focused. It's written, the audience it's written for are parents, families, people who are in the thick of it, people who are stressed out, and they want to know what is up, what is down, all these lies, some of the things we even just talked about today about the suicide lie, a few others, they say that detransitioners are only 1%. So I break down that and why they can't ever know that number, because detransitioners are not tracked. I talk about why this born in the wrong body thing is a lie, or very something to question. And it breaks down, debunks all the lies, and then it also goes into what are the practical things to do if you know somebody who, it's really meant for teens, but it could be for adults too, who is fallen into this line of thinking, and really is more like a cult-like thinking. And so how do you pull someone out of a cult? And so it gives some practical tools, like you got to get them offline, you got to get them in real life, you got to stay connected. If you start, usually, I mean, most of them are not religious, and if you start, quoting the Bible and scripture, usually that will turn them further away from you. So when you're starting out, you got to figure out how to reach them, even though it's something you might really feel passionate about. Like, you got to kind of start where they're at a little bit. So it gives a little bit of that advice. It has a line of questioning on how to approach it, because what seems to work is not confronting them, but asking them questions so that they can maybe start questioning it themselves and planting seeds and recognizing that you're not going to be able to get them to have the light bulb go on right away, but it's usually a process. So it goes into that. It has a trans-English dictionary at the back, so it has a lot of the language that really conflates reality. I think their conversion therapy might be in there, because we talked about that, how conversion therapy is they're pretending it's bad, but it's really just exploratory therapy. I have a lot of artwork from detransitioners in here. Here, this is a drawing that Chloe Cole did that she gave me permission. So, and it's about her losing her feeling of womanhood. The quote is, at the time she was 19. She's 21 now. 19-year-old artist Chloe Cole started puberty blockers and testosterone at 13 and had a double mastectomy at age 15. In her words, quote, "I find it incredibly difficult to convey through words how lost or violated I really feel. I can say visceral things like, I lost my womanhood before I had it, over and over again. But I don't think a sentence can capture anything quite like art does." So it really it helps people understand what this is really about, the dark side of this, the stuff that they gloss over when they have their fancy slogans to make it sound like it's all about acceptance and love, and help people recognize that no, this is a real dark side, and it's really harmful. So we were testifying at the legislature. They were saying that we're the ones that are being harmful because we want to help them be comfortable in their bodies, but really it's a reversal, because they're the ones causing the harm on these young people's bodies. So that's what my book really gives, that message. And this is another, here's another art, another detransitioner. It's like it's an image of her with her trans therapist. And that's the testosterone comes in a syringe, and it's used, feels really oppressed.
Wow.
So yeah, and it's not a coincidence these detransitioners are artistic. The artistic types tend to fall into this more. It's more common.
Wow.
So yeah, it's the praise I've gotten about it is it's written very clearly, very simply. It's easy to read. It's digestible. It gives you what you need to know. There's also some chapters about how to stand up to the pronouns and why they're harmful, because even people who recognize this as a problem, they think maybe pronouns aren't a big deal, it's just pronouns, right? But it's actually a really big deal, and it causes emotional harm, both to the kids who are using the pronouns themselves, but also even to the peers that are in the room. All the anxiety that it creates and all the chaos that it creates for children in general. And people don't really think about that stuff, so I address that.
I love that. And you've also wrote a children's book.
Yes.
Called Froggy Girl.
This one's more fun. This is called Froggy Girl. And yeah, there you go. And the art is actually done by a detransitioner. I don't think I told you that before.
No.
It was drawn by a man who believed he was a woman trapped in a man's body, but clearly he figured out that that was a lie and not true. And he has said doing this book was very therapeutic for him to believe that, to know that he's making a project to help children accept their bodies as they are. So it is about a little girl who wishes she was a frog, and the people in her life, they want to be nice. So they actually affirm her frogginess, and her parents give her frog feet. Her teacher gives her a special flag, and her friends, they try to be nice and go along with it. But she still feels really sad and alone because she can't do the froggy things. She can't swim very well, and she can't make froggy sounds. So she goes on a little walk, and then she meets this wise turtle. He's on the cover here, this wise turtle. And the wise turtle helps her recognize and appreciate that she's a beautiful little girl. And it rhymes. I'll read the very last page. It's a picture book, for young children. So that's what it looks like. I love this drawing. He did a great job.
Wow.
Oops, my acting moved. The little girl learned to love the way God made her, beautiful and smart and full of fervor. That's the last line.
Oh, I love it. Well, Pamela, we will be promoting your books, and we'll make sure that they're on our book list on our website. I just, especially, to write a children's book, how needed is that right now? And so I just want to thank you. Please visit Pamela's website, thetruthfultherapist.org. And if you want to connect with her, you can connect with her on Instagram and what was the other? Twitter.
Twitter, X. And I have a Substack too, actually.
And a Substack. Okay.
Pam, the Truthful Therapist.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. That Disconnected was a film. You guys especially would like that because the filmmaker, he's Christian, and it really combines Christianity with why this agenda is so wrong. It highlights a detransitioner who had found Jesus too. So it's a really beautiful story.
Well, I know Darren's seen it. Right, Darren,
yep.
You've seen it.
Yeah, we've shown it. I've been to 2 conferences that have shown it.
Okay, so did you recognize me then?
Yeah, yep.
There I am.
and I'll just leave it at that for now. Yep, it was very good.
I was fresh then. I was new. I was just I just come off my whole odyssey, and the filmmaker said he was trying to find people for months and months. Nobody in my profession would do it, and then he found me.
Yeah, it is far and few between people who will be bold and care about children, and step up to really advocate for the truth. So Pam, thank you so much for doing that.
You're welcome.
Absolutely. Pam, thank you so much for coming on our show today. And when I first heard you testify, I wanted to stand up and cheer because you're saying the things from an authoritative place that we've all known, and we've been saying them as well. And to hear those words in the Senate Judiciary Committee room, I don't know, there was something really validating and affirming about that, to bring up the autism and the trauma and just how ridiculous this is. And it was funny because one of the lawmakers said, is there even a code like in the insurance? Is there like even a code for this, like conversion therapy? Well, no, it's like, what therapist in their right mind is going to code something for conversion therapy?
No.
So it's
listen, I mean, it's not been a thing. Like they've taken it out of, I don't know what year, not a year that I've been alive, and they're making it like it's happening every day, all the time.
I know.
Ridiculous.
Waterboarding and shocking kids and anyway, thank you for coming on today. This has been just an amazing conversation, and I really do hope I meet you in person someday. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Well, we'd love to have you back sometime, maybe when we have more questions, and I don't know if this issue is going away, so we got to keep talking about it.
Unfortunately, I think we're going to be fighting this for a while. My profession is quite captured. They're not backing down at all.
Wow. Well, you heard it here, folks. We're still in it to win it. Please visit our website, agapefirstministries.org, and if you have the heart to give and the means to do so, that's how we are able to do this stuff, like make these podcasts. So you can do that on the website. We also have a YouTube channel packed full of content. Agape First Ministries Media is our YouTube. And you can also see us on Facebook as well. Well, that's our show for today. We'll be back next week with more Time for Agape.
God bless.
Bye, guys.